Welcome in to the Triple Play Fantasy 15 minutes for all your fantasy needs. You're on the clock. You got to pick a player. You got to pick between players. That's what we're here for. We're to help you in that bind and make sure you make the right decisions when you're making your draft selections here. I'm joined by a couple ugly-looking gentlemen, but very smart gentlemen, and that is the Doc and Kevin Coleman. What's going on, fellas?
You're the one that's ugly. You have little facial hair.
I've got as much as you, so you're calling it yourself ugly. So that's fine.
Yeah, I got it. This is more than what you have, and you're two and a half years older.
Kevin's got more than both of us combined, and he's just glowing in it right now.
Well, that's because I'm Portuguese. Us Portuguese people have a lot of hair, so I get my culture. It's for the culture.
I like it. Well, we're for the culture today because we're talking about something that's kind of polarizing, and that's the Steelers wide receivers. You got Juju Smith-Schuster, Diontae Johnson, Chase Claypool. And right now, according to DLF, Diontae Johnson's going as wide receiver 25. Chase Claypool's going as wide receiver 27. And Juju Smith-Schuster's going as wide receiver 28. So they're not separated by too many rounds. Again, obviously, Diontae is going a little bit ahead of the other two. But at the end of the day, you got to figure out which of these guys you strongly believe in. And maybe it comes down to your roster construction. But each of us are going to sit here and try to defend each of those wide receivers and why you should take them. And we're going to start with Mr. Kevin Coleman, Du Bois. Why should we be taking Diontae Johnson over the other two?
Well, I don't think there's any other choice if you want to win your leagues. When you look at what he is talent-wise and perspective, he had 144 targets last year. Now it's basically missing 2 games. He missed one because of injury, one because he couldn't catch the damn ball, which doesn't bode well for my argument right now. But so he had 144 targets still. Last year, he also finished right behind Davante Adams with 54% highest rate of expected top 12 finishes. And so that's pretty good company to have in. And that wasn't a fluke. So he finished eight top 24 finishes, and he had 13 top 36 finishes last year for each week. And it's entirely possible that, you're going to see Claypool make that jump, but I think that's going to slice into Juju more than it would Diontae. I think Diontae is the wide receiver 1 on that team, and you're going to see him make that third-year leap, just like Godwin did, just like Ridley did. So I think Diontae could be the guy next in line. He's going to get peppered with targets, and it's not unconceivable for him to get 130 targets again. I mean, it's that good. Now, he's got to be a little bit more efficient with the yards. If he can be a little bit more efficient with the yards, PPR-wise, I think he's going to get the catches. So if he gets those yards, get a few more touchdowns, I think we could be talking about he's my wide receiver 12 in Dynasty format. So I'm really high on Diontae.
Yeah, I mean, a very low ADOT last year, but again, was getting a lot of grabs, was Ben's number 1 target throughout most of the season when he was healthy. So I can see the argument for him there, but I'm scared of a couple other things about him. But before we get to that, I'll let Doc go next. Why should we be taking the guy that makes TikTok videos instead of catching passes?
Well, he was second to Diontae Johnson. Diontae had 144 targets. Juju had 128, but he actually had the most catches out of the crew with 97. He had 9 touchdowns, which led the team along with Chase Claypool as well. He had 4 games with 10 plus targets, but no fewer than 5. So very consistent week in, week out. He's also has a rapport with Ben Roethlisberger. He's been there the longest. I think, especially what we saw with Antonio Brown there, Ben really likes having a rapport with his wide receivers, knowing where they're going to go. And Juju signed a 1-year, $8 million contract. It's another 1 year, prove it to me. And he's actually the only player in NFL history that has 2 catches or 2 touchdowns of 90-plus yards. So we forget that big play opportunity is there as opposed to Diontae Johnson, where it's a lot of 4 or 5 yard passes. But Juju has that high upside that I think we sometimes forget about.
So are you comfortable, even though he's going last, do you think he's going to have better production than these other 2 wide receivers?
Yeah, I think what I look for is someone that's consistent. I don't think that you're going to feel like you ever need to bench him. I think Juju is a solid flex. But with Diontae, once again, you're really banking on the volume, 144 targets, but only 85 catches out of those. And with Chase Claypool, 7 of his 9 touchdowns came in 3 games. So you're really banking that he has a boom or bust week, kind of like a Sammy Watkins. And I don't know if I can feel comfortable starting that person each week.
Whoa. Don't be comparing to Sammy Watkins. What is that? What is this shade throwing over here?
Sammy Watkins will have 50% of his touchdowns in 1 game.
Yeah, but Diontae still can't have those volume games. Yeah, I mean, you're right. Juju's consistent, but all I hear out of that is you finish 5th in your league every year. Like, Diontae can hit those boomer busts, and he can give you those wide receiver type numbers. Juju will be okay if he scores a touchdown for you, but there's not a guarantee he's going to do that, especially with Claypool moving around.
Yeah, and I agree.
Diontae had 144 targets and only 7 touchdowns. Juju had 128 targets and caught 2 more touchdowns. I like that ratio better.
Well, let me ask you this. If you guys like touchdowns, why don't we get to my guy? Let's talk about Chase Claypool, who this is a guy that if you're talking about who you think might lead the receivers in touchdowns next year, I think the overwhelming favorite would have to be Chase Claypool, who is coming off of a pretty good rookie campaign, if I do say so myself. He had 9 touchdowns receiving and 2 touchdowns on the ground. Now, let's first take a look at rushing stats, which for wide receivers, yeah, maybe it's not everything, but it's some extra production that you're not expecting. So rushing attempts, he had 10 rushing attempts and 2 rushing touchdowns last year. Let's compare that to Juju Smith-Schuster, who had 1 carry for 13 yards last year. And actually, I'm sorry, that was in 2018. He didn't actually not get a single rush in 2020. So let's chalk that up away. And then Diontae Johnson in 2020 had 3 carries for 15 yards. So he's not running the ball. So the primary ball carrier from the wide receiver position to get extra touchdowns on an end around is going to be Chase Claypool. Then let's look at the target distribution here. Right now, the target percentage last year in the red zone was Chase Claypool, number 1, 20% target share. Then Juju at 19%. Diontae Johnson was 4th at 14% of the target share inside the red zone. So Chase Claypool is the number 1 red zone target, had 20 targets compared to Diontae Johnson's 14, Juju's 19. Then let's look at total targets just throughout the season. You have Juju Smith-Schuster, the number 1% target share at 20.5%. Chase Claypool's number 2 at 19.3%. But again, Chase Claypool is his rookie season, so he's still developing a rapport with Roethlisberger there. So I think he has that potential to become the number 1 targeted wide receiver across the full year with him. But then again, looking at Chase Claypool, you look in the first 3 games of the season, he had 2 targets, 3 targets, and 4 targets. Then in week 4, blew up with 11 targets for 110 yards and 3 touchdowns. He went on to have at least 8 targets in 6 of the rest of the games. So he pretty much in 6 of the last 12 regular season games, he had at least 6 of those targets. So I think, again, it took him a little while to build up the rapport with Roethlisberger. But this is a guy, I think, again, if you're looking for touchdown upside, it's Chase Claypool. If you're looking for a guy that you can probably grab a little bit after Diontae Johnson that has a little bit more of a ceiling to him, it's Chase Claypool. Obviously, there's a chance that he doesn't fulfill where his draft position is, and he's very touchdown reliant, but the targets seem to be there. The averages as far as his yards per catch are there. Again, a guy that's going to be a big boom to your team where you're drafting him. So I'm all the Chase Claypool train here.
So Chase Claypool had a touchdown on 14.5% of his catches. I see that dropping. It was kind of similar to what we've seen with people like AJ Brown that, like 6 of his receptions in 2019 accounted for like 40% of his yards. I don't think you can bank on that high volume again. Juju caught a touchdown on 9.2% of his receptions and Diontae Johnson with 8.23. I also think this was Ben's first year coming back from Tommy John surgery, which essentially is reconstruction of the elbow, which I think is why he did a lot more of those short passes to Diontae and to Chase Claypool. They're also going to have more of a running game. They didn't really have that last year with James Conner and with Benny Snell. I think that's going to take away carries because they drafted Najee Harris in the first round. I think rather than if they're in the red zone and they do an end around, they're just going to pound it in with Harris, and that takes away Claypool's upside because, hey, Robert Woods, some other wide receivers, you're right, they do build in those rushing stats, but I think that's very hard to predict year to year.
But every team does it no matter what. The Chiefs do it with Tyreek Hill. The Rams do it with Robert Woods. The Steelers did it with every team does it.
I wouldn't say every team does it.
Most teams have a receiving option that can go on an end around and we'll get rushing touchdowns. Like if you look every single year, I would be shocked if there's not every single team has one wide receiver rushing touchdown.
I can't think of who does that for the Giants.
Odell Beckham did it when he was.
He's not on the team anymore.
I'd have to look, but I don't think it's uncommon for that, even with a good running back.
All right. Okay. So I want to mention Claypool really quick because I think you're right. He did get targets in the red zone, right? But his completion percentage in the red zone is only 50%. He was 10 for 20 basically. He had 10 completions out of 20 targets. So I think his efficiency does go down a little bit because when you look at Juju, he's at 84% in that area, 16 completion for 19 targets. If you look at Diontae, he's 10 for 14, so he's at 71%. And I also think that one thing that Claypool struggles with is creating separation. And you'll see that target separation. He's actually ranked 99th according to Player Profiler. And in his contested catch rate is 103rd in the league. compared to where like you got Diontae Johnson contested catch rate. He's 32 in the league. So I think that Claypool does struggle with creating separation, one, and two, I think that he struggles with, hey, getting those contested catches. He's going to see better defenders this year. He's going to get the defense's pressure now because they're going to start game planning for him. And I think the one thing that we're missing here is they're going to run the ball more now in the red zone because they have Najee Harris. And so where are those targets going to actually go to? Well, if Chase Claypool can't consistently do it, I think they're going to go to Juju and Diontae.
But you don't think Diontae is going to get the opposing number one corner more often than not, and Chase Claypool will then have the advantage of facing the number 2 or the number 3, depending on Juju. So he'll have better matchups against weaker corners, or he could be more targeted in that sense.
Maybe, but his contested catch rate is not. I don't want to say it's really bad, but it's not very good. So even if he is getting those great matchups, I don't know if he has that separation ability in the red zone to do it. Diontae is a better talent, I believe. So for me, Diontae can step up and create that separation against cornerback ones where Claypool can't. And even if he is going against cornerback 2, which I think he will go to, especially if Juju goes to the slot, I would really struggle with him targeting him in the red zone, especially when they can just hand it to Najee or throw it to Diontae. Or have Juju in that slot, probably against a weaker corner when he works well out of the slot. That's when he was with Antonio Brown. So I really get worried about kind of where does Claypool fit.
Well, I'll tell you what, if Diontae Johnson drops the ball like last year,
you guys are just kicking each other, which is why Juju is there. You guys haven't dinged Juju. Once again, he's in a contract year. I think he took a 1 year, $8 million. He realized he didn't have a really great season. I think he's going to kind of put the TikTok aside. Because he's 24 years old. I think this is his best chance to get a big payday if he can have 1,000+ yards or over 10 touchdowns. And I think it's really going to motivate him in this offseason. Like I said, he has the rapport with Ben. I think he came back because he has that. The city loves him. And I think that's going to motivate him to try to get a big contract. And I think he wants it from the Steelers more than any other team.
Yeah, I think we'll have to watch how it plays out. Obviously, with the increased rushes we're expecting this year, the passing is going to go down. So we'll find out who's going to be the Steelers pass catcher that suffers the most from that, because they're not going to have 3 relevant wide receivers with most likely a running game and a passing option that Najee Harris is expected to be next season. So let us know in the comments below. Are you team Diontae at round 25? Or I'm sorry, pick wide receiver 25? Are you team Chase Claypool as wide receiver 27? Or are you team Juju at wide receiver 28? Who are you targeting? Let us know who and why in the comments below. We love your feedback. And if you're enjoying these Fantasy 15s, make sure you subscribe to the channel, because we have plenty of these that come out multiple times per week about running backs, wide receivers, different sports, all the good stuff that you're loving and you're craving in 15 minutes or less. Fellas, do you have anything you want to say before we peace out of here?
Juju better quit TikTok.
Just draft Diontae Johnson. He's not going to drop the ball this year. Guaranteed on this platform.
Oh, wow. Okay. That hard guarantees from Kevin. I don't know if he can write that check, but we'll find out this season. But thanks everybody for tuning in. We'll catch you guys next episode.